We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about a handful of the rarest watches that you cannot buy, and I'll explain why they are so rare and also why you are very unlikely to be able to purchase them. But first, I'd like to thank you for liking and subscribing. I ask you all the time, but hey, it really does help, and it really allows me to be here every time making more videos for you, and I do enjoy it. So leave in the comments below things you'd like to see in the future. And also, don't forget to check out delraywatch.com, my website. We've got so many watches, guys. We just got in this blue Bucherer Tudor Black Bay Bronze. These things, in the flesh, they're way more charming than you think they'd be online. So I'd like to be able to send this to you to check it out. But of course, we do have the website so you can see it in the interim until one of you lucky guys does pick it up. Very cool watch. Bronze, I'll admit, is on the bit of a dying end, but this one is unique, and they're certainly not making a lot of these things. So this is a rare watch as well. So let's talk about it, guys. There's a charity that exists called Only Watch. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a charity that revolves around muscular dystrophy, and it incorporates most of the big players in the watch industry. There's some that don't participate because I'll tell you why. It kind of does require some investment. But basically, there's this charity, and every year, now I believe that they're on their 8th year, I believe it is, these watch brands, they'll make one specific custom piece for this charity, and they'll do an auction, and socialites in the watch industry and, you know, celebrities and some royalty, they'll all gather in Geneva and they'll bid on these one-off pieces. Now, some of these pieces, including some of them that we'll talk about today, they're incredibly rare, and they're in color combinations that are often blue and gray, a baby blue and a gray, which I think is very cool in watches because you don't see that a lot. And that's kind of the color theme of this charity. But these watches, some of them, they're so customized only for this. You can never get this watch again. And after it's been auctioned off, by the way, Christies is the one that actually hits the hammer for this particular auction. These things are going to go in the back collection of some guy, and you'll never see them again, which is unfortunate, but it's very cool for those of you out there that are into this type of thing and that also will possibly be attending this charity event. But if you cannot make the event, you're not, you know, one of those people, you can of course go to one of a few major cities, or a handful of major cities rather, across the world where you can see these on display. New York City, I believe, is the only city in the whole kind of roadshow, as they call it, where you can see it. But you know, for those of you that are not able to make it or not part of the whole watch auction ring, of course you can see it online at their website or here, where we'll talk about a few of them. So the first watch that I'd like to talk about in this very rare, unique Only Watch auction is a Perrigo Laureato Absolutely chronograph. Now, here's the thing, Perrigo, they've been on a little bit of a dying run the last, I want to say, their entire life, but they do make a very fine, high-quality watch. This particular watch, they do have another version, but this one is very specific with the color themes for the Only Watch whole charity auction. It's got the baby blues, it's got the grays, the hands are blue, it's a 44mm PVD coated titanium case, so it's a light watch, it's cool, it's modern, it's large, it's 44mm, but that's something you're seeing out of Perrigo to try to keep up with some of the other brands that are doing similar things, like with Zenith's Defy Classic, the whole skeleton thing they're doing, and some of the other brands, of course, like Hublot. So Perrigo is going in that direction. This particular watch is estimated to go for between $13,000 and $16,000, but I'm sure, you know, with all these auctions today with watches, this is probably going to sell much above that because it is so special. And of course, it has the Perrigo 3300 or 03300 movement, so it's cool, it's rugged, it's of quality, and I had to talk about it because personally, I love the brand GP. Moving on, now we have a brand here, Speak Maren. They have a London chronograph in the baby blue. Picture here. I love the color scheme on this, the mixture of the bright orange and the baby blue. It's so youthful, playful, whimsical, artistic. I love it. There's not a lot of watches that can pull this off and execute a watch with this kind of color palette or color scheme just so perfectly. I think Speak Maren does a pretty good job. Now, if you're familiar, by the way, this watch is 42 millimeters, features a caliber 92, so basically a vintage movement. It's obviously not a vintage movement, but the design is vintage. Very rare movement to come by today, the caliber 92. So it is of quality. It is a solid chronograph, but the thing is with Speak Maren, I'll talk personally from experience. Maybe about a year ago, the brand kind of dumped a lot of their old inventory. Maybe it was 2 years ago. So there was a watchmaker that, you know, started this, Peter Speak Maren, and the company was sold to I believe, an investment group. And when that happened, they wanted to kind of redesign everything, remove some of the techno time movements that they were putting in these watches, which were kind of off-the-shelf movements. They wanted to go a little bit their own way, do some special things with their watches, their movements, bump up the retail prices, and so they dumped all these watches on the market. And so even we had a couple of them at our store. A lot of online dealers had Speak Maren watches, but now what Speak Maren is doing, I can't say that I necessarily agree with it. It's something that they should do as a business decision, but in terms of, you know, respecting the horology behind it and kind of where they came from, it's almost like, you know, it's just not the same brand that it used to be with the original watchmaker. And I think that when a brand is started around kind of the ideals of a certain watchmaker or person, and then now someone else disguises the fact, you know, pretends like he's still there and he's not, and then does funny things with the pricing and the design and all of that, I'm just not the biggest fan of that. Of course, this is a high-quality watch we're talking about specifically here. It's going to sell between $18,000 to $30,000. Their retail prices are for similar watches are a little bit lower than that on their website, but you can catch this brand selling at much steeper discounts on places like Chrono24. Overall, I do enjoy the brand. It's very cool, but I'll say that it's just not what it used to be, but it still does hold a very interesting place in the watch industry today, and you should really check out Speak Maren. Now this one. It's a Tudor watch. It's the Tudor Black Bay Ceramic 1. Now, I know there's going to be the Tudor guys out there. Leave in the comments below what you think about this, because one of the common issues that some Tudor collectors will have, especially those that are into the mechanics, the movements, everything about that, they kind of complain. They say, man, if only the Black Bay had a see-through case back, I could look at the, you know, the in-house movement. Well, now you kind of can, but unfortunately there's one of these watches. So this Black Bay, it's got the 41 millimeter case, and it's a mixture of titanium and ceramic. So the case is ceramic, but parts of the bezel are titanium. It's got a ceramic insert, I believe, and it's just totally blacked out, or murdered out, I think they call it in the auto industry. Everything is totally black. You can hardly tell that it's a Tudor, but you flip it on the back, you see the see-through case back, and I know there's going to be Tudor guys out there that are going to say, oh man, wow, if this watch was available on the market, I would buy it. And the thing is, they're estimating this Tudor Black Bay to sell between $4,000 and $5,000. I think it might sell for double this because it's so unique. You'll never see this watch coming from Tudor again. They didn't do the blue, which I'm pretty disappointed in, but that's kind of what Tudor and Rolex like to do, right? We do our own thing, everyone else follows us. So they didn't do the blue. I'm a little disappointed in that because, you know, the charity is going for something that is very meaningful cause, the muscular dystrophy, but they're still participating, and they have something unique that I know you guys in the comments below are going to be drooling about, the case back, which was basically just reserved for the North flag before. And lastly, I want to talk about a watch that I think is pretty special. It's the Maurice Lacroix Acon Mercury, and I want to smack that. That's an Acon reference if you're familiar for it. It's actually pronounced Icon, I think. But actually, it's a 44 millimeter case, titanium. It's basically a Royal Oak alternative. It's an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak alternative. We can boil it down to that. The normal Icon, or the Acon, however you'd like to pronounce it, it's a lot cheaper than this particular model. So this one, of course, is made very specifically with the colorway of this whole charity, but they do have the non-charity versions with different colorway. And this has an incredibly unique complication that I think is really amazing, and coming from a brand like this, which is generally not towards the top in terms of complications compared to the independents and some of the high-end manufacturers, I'm wholly impressed. You can see other videos on the internet about this, but basically what this watch does is that it has a very unique mechanism that Maurice Lacroix developed for this. And sure, it has a base at a movement, but they've modified it with some interesting mechanical components and some weights. And what happens is when, oh, by the way, Rolex 16550 Explorer 2 on my wrist. When you move the watch on its sides, the hands will kind of swing down and float around. And then when you move the watch back to normal orientation for viewing, the hands will go back and snap back to the proper time. So for example, you know, if you were to put the watch on the side, the hands will kind of swing down, put the hands on the other side towards the 9, and the hands will swing down that way. And I'm pretty impressed. I think that's pretty cool, especially at a sub $10,000 retail price point for the non-only watch version. But in terms of conversation starter and having a topic to talk about with watch geeks, you go to the Red Bar meetups, things like that, that's unbelievable. It uses a base at a movement that's been modified a little bit with this complication, which is something that you'd expect from the brand, but not something you'd expect with this complication. I'm impressed. They call it the freehand system. I want you guys to check it out. What do you think? Leave in the comments below. Maurice Lacroix just doesn't do things like this, and they come out with this just recently. I'm pretty impressed with it. Are you also as well? Also, what do you think about this auction? You know, what do you think about the whole charity aspect behind it? I think that it has personally become a bit of a social event more so than a charity, but sometimes these things go hand in hand. So leave in the comments below what you think about these watches. Also, go to the website, the Only Watch website. Leave in the comments below some of the watches that maybe, perhaps, you like a little bit more. I'd love to talk with you about them. Also, DelRayWatch.com, Instagram, The Real John P. Thumbs up, like and subscribe, bell notification, all that other stuff. Yeah, have a great week, guys. It's Monday. It's back to work. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.